Have you ever felt so exhausted and drained that you're left questioning if you're burning out? Hi, I'm Flic Taylor, and my passion for burnout and self-care came about when I became a mental health writer who'd lost her mental health to extreme burnout. I know, the irony is not lost on me. Join me as I host Everyday Burnout Conversations, the honest podcast that shares the stories of others from all walks of life as they recover from, manage and avoid burnout by prioritising their mental health and well-being. Expect to hear fascinating conversations, plus positive and actionable tips and tricks that can help you make the simple life changes your mental health will thank you for. Episodes will be delightfully wrapped up in some epic truths and great humour. So enjoy! Lovely. I'm so excited to introduce today's guest. We have Anniki Sommerville, who is a broadcaster, writer, journalist, author, podcaster and coach who specialises in telling positive and authentic narratives about women in their 40s and beyond. Anniki edited the parenting blog Selfish Mother for 3 years and is the co-founder of the amazing Hotbed Collective with his successful podcast and book, More Orgasms Please. Anniki also hosts her own podcast, How to Be a Boss at Aging, with some great expert interviews. And for those women listening who are in their 40s and beyond, do yourself a favour and get Anniki's book, How to Be a Boss at Aging, real advice on how to navigate and embrace midlife. It's bloody funny, honest, and it's packed with great advice that she shares in her interviews with some fantastic experts. To me, Anniki's writing, podcast, brilliant Instagram feed, and her stories, you have to watch her Instagram stories. They never fail to reveal her gold. They showcase her authenticity, relatability, and honesty, along with her gift of humour that just slices through life so perfectly. Anniki's also a mum to 2 gorgeous young little girls. Welcome, Anniki!
Oh, wow. Do you know what? I'm really impressed because you really did nail all of the different things and actually made me feel really good because I was like, I'd kind of forgotten that I'd done all of that stuff. So, yeah, that's brilliant. That was.
I've been following you for years, and your work is incredible. But it's the everyday stuff, like your stories, Anniki. I could be having a really shit day. I'm like, ooh, lovely. Anniki's done a new story, and at the end of it, I'm like, oh, it's all good. I'm laughing. Yes.
I just found it funny. I found that it's funny because a lot of people talk about Instagram being like a force for bad stuff because it's kind of, you feel like everyone's very perfect. And actually, I love sort of sharing those quite tedious little details that happen, little things that happen, especially when you're a parent, or the things that are going through your head. And it actually I think I started doing them when Greta, my youngest, was really like a baby and she was up at night and I was just bored. So in the middle of the night, I would sort of start making funny stories and they actually just kept me awake, and they also helped me keep a bit of a sense of perspective because I think those early days they can be quite bleak, and it's kind of, she was a winter baby, so it was dark, it was cold, there was nowhere to go, and there was all those kind of being up all night, and I think that's when I first started thinking, do you know what, this is making me feel a bit less heavy. That's it.
Yeah. Oh, they're amazing. They're just so real. And I think that's what I love. When you've got a grid of like perfect kitchens and marble countertops and stuff, I'm like, oh, bring on the real, bring on the fun.
No.
So good.
The weird thing is we look at it and we kind of know that it's not real life. And yet we still sort of are a victim to it. And we sort of still think, oh, I don't feel like I measure up to that stuff, even though we know that what we're seeing isn't real.
I know, and you touch on this so beautifully in the book. Like you said the problem is like a societal level, like our expectations are just so sky high. And I'm going to share, like you did a study with 370 women between the ages of 30 to 50 years, and you found that over 50% felt they were more overwhelmed the older they got. And 72% felt they were mainly responsible for the household admin and organisation, which, I mean, it's like crazy. But at the same time, I'm like, yeah, not surprised. So it's really, I thought that would be a great place to start because, as you say, like our expectations are so high of ourselves.
I know. And I think the problem is that somewhere along the line, what happened was we became feminists, which was great. And then we gained more equality. We've still got quite a lot of work to do, but we started going into jobs and roles which men traditionally might have done, but then we kept all of the responsibility for the home and the children as well.
Yeah.
So we kind of basically, people sort of say, oh, now women are doing what men are doing, but they're not. Women are doing what men and women are doing together, the two roles combined. And I had a perfect example of this, because I think at work, I find that one of the most distracting things is we have WhatsApp, and we have lots of channels with the kind of the school admin, the sort of childminders admin, the street has a WhatsApp group, and my partner doesn't read any of it. He doesn't engage with it. He's now got a smartphone. He didn't have one, but he just doesn't engage with it. And there was a conversation going on Tuesday where I was trying to present in a meeting, and at the same time, my partner was texting me about a buggy that needed to be picked up from the childminder. And the conversation was going to me, then I was going to the childminder, and we were going round and round like this, rather than my partner just going direct and sorting it out. And I think part of that is we just become the kind of gatekeeper for all of the family shit. So you're the one that holds all the information. And I find that the problem is, and maybe that stat about it getting worse as you get older, is that I don't know whether I'm as well equipped to handle sort of that brain overload. Like I feel like sometimes I'm dropping the ball because I'm basically just trying to carry too many balls. I'm like this weekend, you sort of got like a sleepover maybe happening, maybe a kids party, having to buy presents for that, work hangover stuff that I've got to think about. If you're trying to do your own personal thing, like you're trying to do a podcast or you're trying to write, I think it's really tough. And I think, it does. It stems back to the fact that we expect too much of ourselves and we don't delegate enough. We want to do it all, but then we often resent our partners because we're kind of like, why am I doing it all? And it's funny, I spoke to a mum yesterday, and she said that she'd asked her partner to make all the packed lunches, but she didn't like the way he was making the packed lunches. So it was kind of driving her a bit mad. And maybe sometimes we're our own worst enemy, because we won't allow. What you have to do is, if you're going to ask someone else to do it, they've got to do it the way that they want to do it. You can't be on top of them going, no, and I'm not having a Dairy Lee Dunker. You've got to do exactly this kind of alfalfa sprout sandwich. I think it's really hard. I don't really know what the answer is, apart from, don't put your notifications off, and ask your other half for help, and just say, I'm sick of doing everything and I'm sick of carrying all this stuff. You do this, this and this.
Yeah, it's really hard to ask for help. Like, you get so used to doing everything, and then, as you say, you become so worried about dropping the ball. Sometimes it's just so hard to ask for help, but then you get caught in limbo because you're like, oh shit, I can't mess this up. But at the same time, I look at my husband and I'm like, why aren't I saying, here, do this?
But then sometimes you probably have that thought in your head of, it takes too long almost to explain the things that need doing. It's kind of easier to do it, but some of it is just our own control freakishness. It's kind of like, I'm going to do it, I'm going to resent everyone because I'm going to do it, but it's also because I want it done in a particular way. Anyway, I mean, I'm not even someone who has really high standards. Like, I'm sitting in a room at the moment that hasn't been cleaned for a long time, and there's a lot of washing. What my partner hates is I put as much washing as I can into one load, so that when it comes out, there's literally every surface is covered in washing. You can see, if I give you a little scan, you can see.
Oh, fantastic.
It's hanging off every surface. But for me, that's like multitasking, because I've done 2 washes in one load. And so it's kind of, I don't know, I think I can't imagine what it's like for women who have very high standards and are like, I have to clean my house every day and I have to have a perfect dinner for my children, because I've just had to become more relaxed in my standards.
Yeah, and I think our kids pick up on that. I really do. Like, I think if your little eyes are watching you. So if you're kind of like, okay, like, we're just trying our best today.
Yeah.
And our best is what you're going to get. That's a good thing. That's a good energy for the kids to pick up on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. I was actually thinking, because I've just started a new job quite recently. I was thinking, oh my God, could I actually get a cleaner? Because I was just thinking that would be a game changer. You know,
Oh,
it's a remarkable privilege if you can ever do it. And
yeah,
I've never been able to afford it.
me
But
neither. Yeah.
I just think increasingly, I sort of think the key to happiness is finding the things that you don't have to do and getting someone else to do them, you know?
Oh, yeah. Get rid of that mental load.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be nice, wouldn't it? Because
Well,
it's that causes some of the anxiety. And you've spoken about anxiety in your book and how it kind of, you really notice it come on after the birth of your daughter, but it was kind of shaped from your early teens of when you tragically lost your stepmom and half sister, and obviously sadly losing your dad so unexpectedly at the beginning of the pandemic. It's kind of, anxiety has kind of come back to the table again.
yeah, and it's funny because I think I always had anxiety, and I write about that in the book, but we didn't really have a name for it. So I just
Yeah.
thought it was quite normal to feel sort of constant butterflies in my stomach, and to have an upset stomach, and to have kind of my heart pounding, and to maybe feel a bit nauseous and get headaches. And I just thought that was all, those physical symptoms were just kind of normal. After my second daughter was born, I actually had this strange experience where I was completely fine for about 6 months. And people were saying to me, oh my God, you don't look like you've just had a baby. I'd have like a full face of makeup on. I'd be out, doing the school run. I was working, I was recording for the Hotbed, I was writing. I think we were writing a book at the time. We were doing all sorts of things. Or maybe we weren't, but we were basically very, very busy. And then about 6 months after she was born, things started to go wrong. Like I started to have a real sense of panic. I woke up in the morning, I was having panic attacks. I was having just suddenly feeling very overwhelmed by small things that were happening with her. So kind of, she was funny in that she had a very strong willful kind of mind. So if you were feeding her a bottle, for example, she would just push it away like that, push it away like that. She didn't want it. And this behavior, because I couldn't control it, I mean, you often come up against that with kids, like you can't control what they're going to do.
Yeah.
Crazy. But I started to think, oh my God, she's going to starve to death. She's not eating, and this sent me down into a very sort of dark place. And I had to go and see, luckily I contacted the NHS quite early on, and then I got counselling. I think when you're a mother, you quite often get prioritized. I know if you're trying to do it normally, it can take months and months. And I had some cognitive behavioral therapy. And I must say, actually, I'm not even sure that I did all of the tools in the cognitive behavioral therapy, but just the fact that I admitted that I was struggling seemed to help.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I've admitted this isn't normal. I've admitted that I don't feel great. And also sort of, I suppose one thing that the therapist said to me, she said, this is very normal. Like some of it may be hormone related as well.
Yeah.
You're not sleeping. The complicating factor for me is that because I had, my children really late, I've also potentially been going into perimenopause. I don't really know actually, but that's also a factor. So I think with anxiety, I think once you've got it, and there's a brilliant book that Sarah Wilson wrote about anxiety. And what I like about it is you live with it, so it doesn't go away. So I think if you are somebody who suffers with it, what you'll find is that if you're not eating right, if you're not sleeping, if you're spending too much time on social media, if you're, maybe drinking too much booze, all of those things, too much work stress, all of those things will just bring out an episode of it. And actually, once you know what are the things that are going to trigger you, and I think for me, I know that all those things are a bit dangerous, then you can start. And I loved when I was writing the book, I found lots of tools which I thought kind of worked. And I don't really do cognitive behavioral therapy, but it is very normal things like make sure I'm not hungry, make sure I'm drinking water, try and get a good night's sleep, try and get outside into fresh air, try and get away from my phone if I can, because that can be a bad one. And writing is another one, actually. Actually, when I sit down and I start to write or do stories, it's almost like it's cathartic. It's all coming out.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I think you also write, which I was really nodding along to just this week, actually, because so you talk about booze and how actually, like when we were younger, like it was all about that lifestyle, that 90s, like I was definitely there. And actually now we're getting older, you kind of go, God, I don't even feel that great after. Don't even, it's not working for me. And I think you write about it beautifully in the book, and how alcohol's just not serving us, because we kind of think of like self-care was kind of presented to us as like bubble baths and body lotion and stuff, but it's so much more, isn't it? That like that's just surface. There's so much more to it now.
I mean, it's really tricky because I've just had a month where I was sober, and I felt mentally and physically so much better. Like the first 2 weeks I didn't feel anything, and then I really started to feel a lot better. And then the weather started to warm up here, and we had the prospect of maybe having the restrictions removed. Last Monday we're supposed to be fully free. Obviously that's been halted now for another month, but there was all this stuff, and my partner and I went to a pub garden, and I really fancied a drink. So I had a drink because I have been sober in the past and actually been completely fine with that. Sometimes actually for 2 years on the trot. And I think what I've realised is, for me, is I have to just moderate. I have to moderate, because my problem is that sometimes if I'm in a group scenario especially with other women, and they're drinking a lot, I just mirror their behaviour, and I drink and I drink and I drink, and I forget that I'm in my late 40s, and then I actually the next day I'm almost like I'm then waking up at 5 with a 2-year-old, morning, and I'm like, I am just broken, and then of course all the anxiety will pitch in, because I think from the statistics, I remember when I was doing some research for the book, that when you're older, women don't really process alcohol very well anymore. So the fact that you actually, your hangovers are worse, you do feel worse. You probably need to drink less to get the effect that, because I used to be able to, back in the old Britpop days, I could probably have about 5 or 6.
Oh my God. Yeah, easy.
That would be my kind of starter. And then I would get into doing, shots of whatever, and I'd still be fine. Now what I found is 1 glass of wine, pretty much, and that's it. And that's really sad to say, but no, not really much more than that. I don't know if you feel the same. It's terrible.
Yeah, I hadn't drunk for a little while, and then it was like my son's birthday, and they finished school, and you're kind of like, all is good, and I got a bottle of wine, and I drank the whole thing because, nice and tasty, lovely. And then the next day I was like, oh my God, why do I feel so shit? Why am I so shit in my life? And I instantly went down that spiral of negative thinking and talk, and I didn't even think anything of it. I was just like, okay, I am just, a complete bag of shite. And then I was reading your book, and I was like, oh, yeah. No.
That's the other thing which is interesting, because Mandy Manners, who's written, she works for she does sober coaching and coaches people who are interested in becoming sober. She said to me that, interestingly enough, sometimes just that moderate drinking is quite a brain drain, because before you go anywhere, you're kind of going, right, how much am I going to drink? Am I going to drink 1 glass, or am I going to drink 2 glasses? Am I going to have a beer, or am I going to have a white wine? What about if I have 2 gin and tonics? And she said, actually, you're using up so much bloody energy just trying to work out what is okay. That she said for her, it was easier to just stop, because then there's none of the kind of like, am I going to drink a bit too much? What am I going to do when the Prosecco comes out? Am I going to go in on a round? It's all this stuff. But I must say that I don't feel like I'm fully, I think now that I'm back in a working job and sort of going into an office a couple of days a week, I do find that a little bit of booze is helping me make the distinction between kind of work and relaxing kind of.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what things do you, because you're busy, like you've got a lot going on, and I think you do a real good job of because you're so honest on social media, like sometimes you will say like, oh, I'm beat. Like, I'm going to bed. Like, I can't do. You're really good about that. So what things do you do to kind of really keep that kind of anxiety at bay? Like, keep that self-care in check and look after yourself?
You know what? I'm probably not brilliant at it. Sometimes actually I feel like I've almost gone over the line and then I rein it in. But I think usually what I'm starting to get better at actually is just hopefully sometimes saying no to things. So I would sometimes just, if I don't fancy doing something or going somewhere, I just say no thanks and I don't do it, whereas before I would have done it. I take any opportunity I can to like lie down. So I know that sounds terrible, but like when my girls are playing in the bedroom, which they don't do very often, not happily anyway, I will quite often just lie on the floor. And I'm still present, but I'm basically just resting my body while they run around and do whatever they want. We have a lot of TV on, like a lot. And I think probably, you know, certainly during lockdown, we've gone from a kind of like TV going on now and then to TV just being the sort of backdrop to our lives. And so there's kind of little things that I do. One of the most useful things I found, which I discovered more recently, is Tara Brach. She's this amazing, she teaches meditation and mindfulness. And so what I've started doing is I'll listen to one of her meditations when I'm just walking about or if I'm on my way to work. And she's got, I guess essentially all it's trying to do is to kind of think about regulating your breathing, thinking about just being very present in the moment. And that was a really good technique actually that someone taught me, which was that if you're feeling very, very overwhelmed and, you know, you've got that kind of heart in your mouth and, you know, palpitations, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Try and focus on the physical world around you and your own body. So sort of like look at a tree and go, oh, that's a tree, name the thing, feel your feet sort of on the floor, touch something. So sort of almost like getting back in touch with your senses. So, oh, this is fabric, I can feel it. What can I smell? Oh, I can smell, you know, there's a bit of scented candle in the air, maybe. It's all trying to root you back into your body. I mean, it was funny. I was talking to someone else. I was thinking, actually, when you get older, what does happen is you seem to recognize the signs more readily of the fact that you are going into a bit of a crazy mindset. So like last week I was the victim of a banking fraud, which is really boring, but I realized that I was getting alarm bells because I was waking up at night, I was coming down, I was scrolling all the time, I was literally, but you see, I'm much better now at recognizing it. So I was like, okay, you know, just breathe, just stop yourself. Okay, that doesn't mean I don't go off sometimes, I do, but just remember that there are very simple things you can do to just bring yourself back into your body and calm down again. And I think hopefully you can work out the things that kind of work for you. You know, even this morning actually, it's funny, I'm at home in the mornings trying to get the girls off to childcare and school and my partner's at work, and I actually got in the bath first thing, and I was like, and actually it turned out it was a disaster because I got in the bath and then my 7-year-old decided to get in as well. And then basically the 2-year-old was crying hysterically because she was dressed, but she wanted to get in the bath. And I was like, Mrs. Large, the elephant, who talks having 5 minutes peace and she never gets it. But it was the thought behind it, which, you know, I was sort of thinking, you know what, you're really tired. Why don't you just try and build in something nice into this drudgy pile of crap? So yeah, I think hopefully you discover a range of techniques.
Yeah, because the phone thing is hard, isn't it? Especially because like you're really good with your Instagram, like you're just so honest and real, and I bet you get a lot of engagement from people and then reaching out. It's really hard to kind of just put it away. I actually sometimes have to, I can't give it to my husband because he won't pay attention. I give it to my 14-year-old and say, look, hold my phone, let me know if any important messages come, but like take it away from me. Like I can't, otherwise I'm just like stuck and I'm in that vortex.
Mine's got so bad now because I feel like I have to reply to everything. Like I can't, It's almost like, you know, when you leave a door open or a door ajar, I'm like, no, I need to reply. So you're on all these different channels. So even like we're on Slack at work, and on Slack, if somebody makes a comment or something, people do a thumbs up emoji, or they might do a high five emoji. And I'm now sort of like going through their comments and going, oh, I'll do that, a thumbs up emoji. And then something comes up into your messages on Instagram and you're like, oh, someone's liked the message. So do I like the fact that they've liked the message? Oh, I better do that. I've got to like the message back again. And then they're liking your message that you like. And then you're like standing next to your kid who's basically going, mummy. And you're going, no, look, I've just got to like the message.
Just got to keep liking.
Keep liking it. Someone's just liked something. I need to make sure that they know that I liked it. And it's just it's so hard.
It's
very addictive, and I think my addiction has got worse in the last 12 months.
For sure, absolutely. We've just come out of lockdown in Canada, and it's obviously kids have finished school now, but I'm like, oh my God, I'm really missing contact. Like I've got 2 boys, husband, even the cat's a bloody boy. I'm like, oh my God, I just need the contact, the shoulder of another woman. Like
I know, you just need to have a chat. It's just like, it's so I'm exactly the same. And I think I use my phone, and then I sometimes think, shit, do I have any friends? Like, do I actually have friends? Because obviously you haven't seen anyone, you kind of. And that's the thing that I'm still battling with a bit at the moment, is that I don't really like talking to people on the phone anymore.
Don't like
doing it.
No.
But then I also worry that what's happening is that the substitution isn't probably a good thing. And I do a chapter on that, on kind of actually sending texts back and forth. You feel like you're ticking, oh, okay, I've done that friend, I'll do another one now to this friend. Or you're commenting on their Facebook and you're like, actually, we need to talk. But for me now, talking on the phone, if I see my phone going off and it's a friend I haven't spoken to for a while, I'm like, I can't do it. I just can't physically do it, because I know that I'll possibly be on for an hour. And it's something I used to really enjoy. But I think now when you're busy and you've got little kids, you're like, it's awful, but I'd rather fill that up with doing other stuff,
exactly. And it's also that kind of, we haven't seen people, and now we're kind of like, oh, you feel that anxiety of going back out into the world. Like I was like, literally, I'd been in a 7-week lockdown, and the bins had been done, and I looked out the window, I was like, oh, I'll go and get the bins in. And then I saw the neighbours come out, and I was like, oh, I'll give it another 5 minutes. And I thought, I've been in lockdown, and I'm going, oh, hang on a minute, I can't cope with the conversation with the neighbour.
I'm really funny like that. Like I was coming home from work, and I knew that I could see a friend who I love, and she was walking up the road, but I was running late to get home. And I actually got behind, I was carrying my Tesco shopping with my loo rolls and stuff in it. And I dived behind a car and I was like hiding. I was all hunkered down, and her kid ran past first. And I thought, oh my God, she could see me. And but I knew that I didn't want to have a chat, because I knew the chat would be, I knew it was terrible. I was thinking about the time. I was thinking it's going to take another 10 minutes for me to get home.
I just need to get home. I'm exhausted. Yeah.
And that's my worry a bit with this busy culture. One of the many worries, but I think it's kind of, when you do see a friend in real life and you sit with them and you're in their presence, you feel so good.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we just forget that, and you just so much hassle, and it's like, but it's worth it, isn't it?
It really is. It's funny, isn't it, how I think we'll all be changed in this pandemic. I mean, obviously, we're all saying that, but hopefully we will come out with some new, more positive habits, dropping that busyness, that addicted to busyness thing. Oh my God, that badge, I've definitely bloody worn that badge. And it just doesn't, like, why are we doing it? You talk about Slack, and I can remember thinking, like, the pressure of responding to have my little green light on so that everyone knew I was still there. Like, why? Oh,
I find it really hard. Also, just kind of, when I'm working, and then I take my phone to go and have lunch, and I'm still on it, and I'm still replying to things, and I'm just thinking, actually, this isn't healthy. I think possibly because we're talking like on, towards the end of the week, I often feel this real sense of overload. And now I've got this real desire, like I just need to leave my phone. I feel like I should be like walking amongst trees, breathing in fresh air. Again, that's something that I know would make me feel a lot better. And I think certainly when you think about, Instagram, for example, you can get very hooked up and very obsessive about things that are happening on Instagram. And especially if you're a writer, you can be like, oh my God, that writer's got a book coming out. Oh my God, the book looks really good. And it looks like it's going to sell millions of copies. And who's their agent? And, I haven't got an agent at the moment. So it's all kind of like, why haven't I got an agent? Oh, that's because, nobody wants me because I'm too old and it's not relevant. And, she's much prettier than me. Or, there's a whole load of stuff that you can go through. And yet there's it's just such Instagram's just such a magnetic pull. I think some people say to me, oh, why don't you just delete the app for the weekend? And I'm like, what? Like, just delete it off your phone for the weekend so you can't go on it. I'm like,
that's a big move.
No, there's no reason why you couldn't do it.
No.
But there's another part of me going, what if I can't remember my login? What if I can't get back into my account again? What happens? It's just ridiculous. It's kind of, anyway, I do use, actually, there's an app that you could use called Forest, where I think it grows a tree. So the longer that you leave your phone and don't touch it, this tree starts to grow, a little animated tree.
That's cool.
If you pick the phone up, then the tree dies. So it kind of suddenly all crumples up and it says, so I've started using that sometimes.
Oh, I need that.
Yeah, it's the enemy of writing as well, because it's like you can never get any writing done.
Exactly. And I think it's hard being a writer anyway. I can remember last year watching the Cheltenham Literature Festival, and it was Kathy Rensenbrink, is that how you pronounce her surname?
Yeah.
And she, like, I was watching her and, like, I can't remember who was interviewing her, but they said, like, when you go to write your book, like, how do you approach it? She says, well, 95% of the time I'm trying to battle with myself that I cannot write this book. Like I'm battling with those self-doubt thoughts and negative and it's so true, isn't it? It's like, oh my God.
I know. Yeah. And that's one of the things now that I've started doing a bit of like teaching people how to do non-fiction, in particular. Yeah. One of the things that I sort of advise against is it's good to know what other books out there are a bit like yours, but whatever you do, don't start doing too much research into other books or reading other books in the same category, because I know, like, I'm trying to write one at the moment about work and it's going well, but what I don't want to do is I don't want to start reading the other ones, because I know that if I do, I'll be saying to myself, there's no point in my book because all of the stuff about work has been written already. Whereas I know actually that what I can offer up is a very different perspective. It's not going to be a scientific one, or it's not going to be necessarily an expert one, but it's going to be a 40-something woman's one. And so I think that's, you have to give yourself a pep talk, don't you, as a writer?
Yeah.
Because I think that's half the battle. Most people who talk to me, they say, I really want to write a book. And I say, well, the first thing is believing that you can do it,
Yes, absolutely. And you're so right about reading other people's work. Like, I have to be quite strict with myself, because I will instantly go to, oh, yeah, they're so much better. I'm just, what am I? Oh, go back, don't even bother. So it's so true. It's a real battle. And that's not good for us. I guess it's just boundaries. Everything we've got to do is put these clear boundaries in and protect ourselves. But I feel like we've spent years of no boundaries, not even recognizing we need to protect ourselves. And so it's tricky.
I think the funny thing is that the technology is something that it can serve you. It really can in some scenarios. But also the technology can dehumanize us as well. And I sort of think that's, sometimes, the way that we communicate with one another, the times that we post, and sometimes perhaps we're not quite so thoughtful. We're kind of like, got to reply, got to do this, got to do that. And you get into that kind of mindset. And I've upset people before because I've sort of said things on social media, upset friends, and then basically realised months later that they'd been upset about it. And again, it was kind of just being more reactive, and it's, people always have it, don't they? It's all the kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's why I don't go on Twitter, because I'm always, seems every time I hear anything going on Twitter, there's some terrible fighting going on, and I'm like,
yeah, I don't need that.
yeah, I can't deal with that. I've got, my kids are fighting all the time.
I was going to say, I've got my own fighting match in my living room. I'm all right. I'll referee that one.
And I'm not well informed enough either. I sort of feel like if people start throwing a lot of stuff in my face, I'll be like, oh my God, can I just go away and read this first, and then I'll come back.
Yes, it's so true. It's so true. Yeah, no, we'll stick with Instagram. Oh, Anniki, you're just fantastic. I love your approach. You're just no nonsense. And it's just so lovely to hear. You know what's really lovely, and I hope this comes across on this podcast I'm doing, is that, you know, we are all a work in progress. You know, there's no one solid set of rules for anyone. And, you know, we're all just trying to, you know, shape it and mold it and try and do our best.
We're all muddling along, and I think that's the thing. And I think we need to, I mean, certainly if there's one message in the book, I hope it's kind of like, listen, just don't put so much pressure on yourself. And, you know, and the way that you live your life is the way that you decide is best for you. So, you know, try not to, you know, there's so much judgment and there's so much opinion out there. And it was only actually when I had Greta, the first time, I was bombarded with all these messages, you know, when you first become a mum, like, you must feed her, breastfeed her exclusively. You must not do co-sleeping. You know, you have to do weaning at this age, and everything felt like there was these very strict rules. And I tried so hard to keep by the rules, and then realized that this was absurd, that I didn't understand who had actually designed the rules in the first place. And then the second time I was kind of like, do you know what? We're just going to do what works for us.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to care too much if, you know, if I get out a packet of crisps to give her as a snack and some other mum gets out, you know, some freshly grated carrot, I'm just going to go, do you know what? I'm sorry, but we're just eating crisps at the moment. And I'm not going to, the first time, I think that's about everything. It's kind of, even like the size of your house, you're kind of like, oh, my house isn't big enough. And then you're like, okay, my house isn't big enough, but actually, what would I need to do in order to have a massive house? I'd need to work probably full time. I'd probably need to go back into a corporate kind of, you know, 9 to 10 o'clock at night kind of workload, you know, and then maybe we could move to a bigger house. And is it worth it? You know,
you're missing out on that time with your girls, and yeah,
and also the awareness that actually, I mean, that's the thing that I have to stop myself with, because I'm often glass half full, and then I think, my God, I don't even realise how lucky you are in London to have a house. Like, you know, we don't realise it. So we're kind of, you know, sometimes we're sort of looking at these style influence. Like sometimes I'm sort of looking online and going, oh my God, look at her kitchen, it's absolutely you know, it's got massive kitchen. And I've always wanted a big kitchen. You know, I've always wanted that, you know, the extension. I've always wanted that. I've never afforded it. And then I'm like, oh, you know, but what would I have to do to get it? Maybe I couldn't write. Maybe I couldn't have a part-time job. Because, you know, if I'm the breadwinner, so effectively, you know, it's kind of, it's a trade-off, isn't it? So as I get older, I'm like, okay, if I can have flexibility in my job and I can see my kids sometimes and I can write, that's my definition of success.
Absolutely.
And if I get invited round to somebody's and they've got a massive kitchen, then I just think, oh, but they've, you know, there's a lot of work that's gone into that, you know.
Yeah.
Or they've just inherited a whole load of money.
I know. There is that. There is that. I know. I look at Motherland and I look at Amanda's kitchen. I'm always like, oh, that looks a nice kitchen.
And the thing is, you shouldn't really care, but you do. You can't help yourself sometimes, I think.
No, but your girls are going to remember, their childhood memories are going to be of you, like, being real and present and writing and pursuing your passions and the fun, as opposed to, we never saw mum, but we had a great kitchen. Like, you know. I
know. Well, it's also, I think it's really important. And actually, I was reading, there was a study that was done, I think, a lot, working parents in particular and working mums, you know, they're made to feel very guilty for the fact that they go to work, and what impact does that have on your kid? And I think actually it's not a bad thing for your kids to see you doing stuff and being busy, as long as, I mean, my challenge always is just trying to engage with the parenting and not, I think the worst case scenario is when you're trying to do stuff, worky stuff, and being with your kids and you're not doing either. So it's kind of like, I think for me, I have to just be okay now. And I hate doing playing with toys. I can't deal with it. But I'm like, okay, now I'm going to try and do at least 10 minutes. Lying on the floor.
Playing Sleepy Lions. Sleepy bunnies, everyone, sleepy bunnies, lie down.
It's just kind of just relaxing, just kind of chilling. And enjoying them, because that's the other thing.
Yes.
I desperately wanted to have kids, so I don't want to sort of blink and it's gone.
Yes, yeah. And it really is, like, Alfie just turned 12 this week, and I'm like, God, I can remember when he was little, and now he's like this man. Like, he gives bear hugs. I'm like, what happened? You know, that time just flies by. Yeah, you have to enjoy every minute. Oh, well, Anniki, I have been asking all my guests some quick fire, light-hearted questions to end our podcast interview, because it's really interesting how everyone answers differently. So I don't know if you're up for it.
Yeah, I'm up.
Okay, right. Okay then, darling. On your dodgy, tough days, do you opt for lemon in water or lemon in gin?
Well, it's funny. I would have said lemon in water, but now it probably is just one lemon and gin. Just one, though. Just one
to, like,
just to
devour, enjoy.
Yeah, and then back onto the lemon and water.
Yeah, good on you. Do you move your body or move the remote?
Do you know what? It's funny. I wasn't an exercise person, but over lockdown, I started doing these little online exercise sessions, and I'd say probably move my body. Certainly in the morning. That's another great tip. If you wake up with an anxious head in the morning, do a quick online workout, because it does something to your kind of, I think basically what it does is it shifts the energy from kind of up here to around your body. And I worked out quite early on that you can't really get anxious whilst you're exercising. It's actually, for me anyway, I can't go for a run and feel anxious at the same time.
Yeah, and it's a good one.
Yeah, unless someone's chasing me.
We don't want that, no. Do you go for bag of almonds or bag of Maltesers?
Oh, I'd always be a bag of Maltesers.
Me too. Yeah. With my tea. Sometimes, like, no one's around, I'll, like, dip it in. Ooh, I really like sucking them, and that's my favourite. And then trying very hard not to bite them, or sometimes just biting them and trying to suck the middle out. But yeah, I mean, almonds are very good for you, but it's hard. Yeah, it's hard to compare it to Maltesers. Yeah, no, they are magic, aren't they? Really. Right, do you ask for help or are you happy to hermit? It's a tricky one. I probably am more like the hermit option, actually. Yeah. Me too. It's so hard to ask for help. I don't know why. I know. And it's kind of, I'm more the kind of person that I get very resentful and get a big chip on my shoulder because I feel like the people around me should just intuit that I need help. Right, yes. Yeah. No, I do that too. So hard. Right, lastly, what's the one thing you're going to do today for yourself in the name of self-care that your future self will thank you for? What's the one thing? Do you know what? I might have another go at just having the bath, but actually instead of doing with the kids, but actually to have a bath on my own. And then one of my favorite things to do actually is to put a podcast on my, put it on the sink and then listen to a podcast, or sometimes read a magazine, or even read a book. Actually, sometimes just that gets a bit soggy, but have a basically I love just switching off like that, because there's loads of football on at the moment, so I'm not a big football fan. So sometimes I'm so tired I just sit there like a zombie watching the football, and I'm like, why am I doing this? I don't even like it. So I think tonight I am actually going to go and just have a nice hot bath and just kind of not be productive for a while. Good for you. I love it. Good for you. Oh, Anniki, thank you so much. It's been so lovely talking to you. I'm so grateful for your time and for your advice. And I hope women go and get your book. It really, look at the flags on it.
I know. You know what? I feel so happy. You have to hold it up.
I'll hold it up for you, darling.
I need to take. I can't. When I saw that, I was like, I couldn't believe that you'd put all of it. It put light in my soul. That
honestly, it's just covered in pink and orange highlighter. It's so good. And you also have a new book out, fiction, which is tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's a fiction book called Hang On, which has come out, and that's quite a funny story about a woman who tries to get pregnant through basically having one night stands. So she's kind of single, and she sort of embarks on this adventure. It's funny. I wrote it when I was sort of in the grips of kind of fertility treatment, and I'd read some columnist had said in her column that she had gone into the bathroom when her boyfriend had dumped the condom into the waste paper basket, and she basically then tried to empty the contents into herself to impregnate herself because her boyfriend wasn't on board with having a child. And I thought that sounded like such an elaborate plan. And then I thought, actually, I imagine that sometimes that must happen, that women are just, and actually with me, I knew how hard it was when you were desperate to have children and it wasn't happening. Yeah. So it's definitely not a serious book. It's definitely a comedy. And I think that's how I deal with shitty things, is kind of actually going off on a bit of a comedy tangent, because it, hopefully that lightens it up a bit and makes it easier to carry,
Yeah, and your one-liners, they have me like bent over double, like crying. They're so good. So good. So I hope everyone goes and finds your books. You're absolutely brilliant, Anniki. And thank you so much for your time. This has been incredible. And I really think it will help some women out there who are struggling.
Oh, well, thanks for having me on, love.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Everyday Burnout Conversations. Please check the show notes for any links to items discussed today, and the original music and sound editing is by Chris Taylor. If you've enjoyed this podcast and have a spare few minutes, then it would be absolutely amazing if you could leave me a happy starry rating and review. It really does help this podcast reach a little further, and I'd just love it to land in the lap of those who, like me, last year are perhaps feeling isolated and lonely in their burnout struggle. Please note, this podcast is not intended as medical advice. Remember, you matter, so don't hesitate to reach out to your doctor or mental health professional for support if you're having a rough time. Wishing you a great week and take good care of yourself. Bye for now.